The Pro Show is brought to you by Rockin' Media and our proprietary Flash HDR photo process, providing you with the best, most realistic photos of your property. See the difference at rockinmedia.com. Hi, and welcome to the Pro Show. I'm Rick Machle. On this show, we're talking about Highlands Ranch. This is a large community on the south side of the Denver metro area. We have two experts who live and work in this area to tell you all about it. In addition, they're going to give you staging tips, and we have a very unique property where we're going to be showing it vacant and then also staged with some virtual staged images as well. In addition, we're going to have Greg talking about rentals and Nancy about mortgages. That's all next on The Pro Show. Joining us today are two members of Anzur and Associates, a team within Coldwell Banker's South Metro office. First, we have Andrea. She is from that office. Hi, Andrea. And
hello.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. And also we have Brian Anzur from Anzur and Associates. I wonder how they got the name. It's great having you both on. And so first of all, I'd love to get a little bit of background. Andrea, where are you from? How did you end up in Colorado?
I actually was born in Phoenix, Arizona, so lived there my whole life up until I was 25. Bought my first home when I was about 21 years old. So I did sell it before I moved here. Got into the Colorado market right around 2006, which was kind of a rough time. So yeah, I've been through some of the different housing markets and got into real estate. More recently, I was a paralegal for 10 years. And then joined Brian on his real estate team back in like 2017.
So you're a paralegal right out of college? Is that what?
Yes.
Okay. And you did that for a few years and then decided, hey, let's go into real estate.
Yeah. I was babysitting lawyers and taking care of tracking deadlines and contracts, and kind of lends itself to real estate too. So Brian was getting really busy with his real estate business, so I quit being a paralegal.
Babysitting me.
Started babysitting him.
Speaking of babies, you also have some kids, don't you? Both of you?
Oh, yes.
By the way, they're husband and wife, not brother and sister. So just want to make that clear.
I'm married into the associates team, so it'll last.
How many kids?
So we have 3.
Okay.
They are now they are 4 years old, 10 years old, and 12 years old.
Well, those are good ages. They haven't hit the teens.
We got one more year until that.
And Brian, where are you from?
I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and moved here in 1991. I followed my mom into the business, so it truly is a family business here on Anzur and Associates. Mm-hmm. I started off doing underwriting for insurance companies, and then followed my mom into the business. She was an excellent mentor, and haven't looked back since. This month, I'm celebrating 20 years in real estate.
Well, congratulations. So you've both have seen some of the worst times in real estate, the 08 debacle. You're within that window for sure. Well, it's great having you on. Well, today we're going to look at the South Metro part of the Denver metro area, in specifically Highlands Ranch. Here is C470, and if we scroll up a little bit, we can see Denver's kind of up toward this area, up in this area. I'm going to come up here. We have all the Denver area up here. So I'm going to zoom out. There's Denver up in here, and then we're going to go down into the C470 area. And we have these 3 main zip codes. And if we look at sales inventory growth, and this is from February stats because we're just into April, and that means that we haven't quite got March stats. But while we've had more inventory, a lot of the things haven't changed a whole lot, or at least I don't think they have. And we'll ask Brian and Andrea whether they have after we go through these. The sales inventory growth has gone from 19 to 37 in 80126 in the middle of Highlands Ranch. It's gone from 46 to 74. And on the east side, of Highlands Ranch, it's gone from 10 to 39. So it says it's a 305% increase, but there were so few listings on the market last year, it's not really a valuable metric to look at. In addition, if we look at days on market growth, those have gone from 20 to 33, and that's a 67% increase from 20 to 26, and from 18 to 36 out on the east side of the Highlands Ranch area. The median listing price is up a little bit on the west side from $647,500 to $656,499, so just slightly up. The median list price in the center of Highlands Ranch is down 21%, but that could also be because there were a lot of very expensive homes on the market a year ago. It went from $987,500 to $774,075, and then on the east side, it's up 4.3% from 683 to 713. And then the new listing count is also up from 26 last year to 34 this year, from 48 last year to 64 this year, and from 20 last year to 48 this year. So what are you seeing since these numbers came out? And are you seeing that we're seeing more buyers and sellers? Brian, why don't you kick us off on this one?
Yeah, and so it's always difficult when you look at the micro statistics on these things. When we only have 10 listings in a geographical zip code, and then all of a sudden we jump up to 30, those percentages look wild. But what I'll tell you is we are seeing the typical kickoff to the new year. Towards the fourth quarter of last year, as we moved to the first quarter of this year, there just wasn't as much activity in the marketplace. People were waiting to see what interest rates were going to do. Buyers were sitting on the fence. A lot of the people that we talked to who were thinking about listing in Highlands Ranch said, hey, we want to make sure it's the most ideal timing for us if we're going to make a move, especially if we have to find something to purchase. So I think that we're seeing kind of the typical first quarter ramp up. And, as we get closer to kids going on summer vacation, that's typically a time that we see. So Andrea and I are having a lot of conversations right now with people who are listing their houses and are also looking to replace those houses. So the market certainly is heating up. And I think Andrea would kind of agree. Activity is up, and we're not as worried about days on market because we still have a lot of inventory that we're working through that people just don't like or are overpriced. So a lot of the houses that we see that are competitively priced, that are in a good location and relatively updated and taken care of, those ones are moving fast.
Andrea, are you seeing about the same?
Yeah, we definitely noticed that third and fourth quarter of last year, the election was causing a lot of people to want to hesitate to list. The interest rates were still really high. So we had tons of people reach out to us in the fall saying, we're going to list our house next year. And in those situations, a lot of times we will have Rick and his crew come out and take some fall shots of the exterior of the house. So we get the nice looking leaves and grass and trees. And now those people are ready to list their house in the late winter and early spring. And we have some of the pictures to show the examples of what it looked like back then. We definitely had just a ton of people reach out to us in the first quarter of this year saying, we're ready, let's list our house. Either we're getting relocated for work, or we're once the kids are out of school, we're empty nesters and we need a smaller house. So things are definitely kicking up right now.
And Andrea, are you hearing in the marketplace that people are just assuming, okay, if I'm going to list my house or if I'm going to buy, this is what the interest rates are, what the interest rates are?
Yeah, and a lot of people have a ton of equity in the house that they're going to be selling. So they're not looking at a huge mortgage. So even though the rates may be higher, they're going to have a good amount to put down on their next house. So that kind of softens the blow.
Brian, what are you seeing with like new buyers? Are they kind of able to make it work, or is it really tough for them right now in this market?
It's tough for them. There's opportunities, but I've had a couple first-time home buyers, a couple, and then also an individual who, were a little shocked at what their monthly mortgage payment was going to be, and kind of pulled back from the market a little bit. Our view is we're going to be here to help you no matter whether it's now or in the future, and you've got to do what's best for you. We also caution that sometimes you can't out-save the marketplace. if we've got prices that are going up because of limited inventory, then it's tough to save that more money for a down payment. So we encourage first-time homebuyers to look at all of the things that make up, their mortgage payment, the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, HOA, and make sure that they are in a budget that will work for them. But the sooner that you can sit down in a place and start having it make money for you, the better. We don't want to see people sit on the sidelines for a year sometimes and then come back to us and go, oh my gosh, the prices are, this much higher, and I just wasn't expecting that. So we try to take a full view approach and really counsel them through it. But ultimately, it's their decision. We're just here to backfill with information so that they can make the decisions that are best for them.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you think that median list price going down so much has to do with a lot of super high-end homes not being listed right now? Is that what's going on, Brian?
I think it could. I also believe that, sometimes we just have more houses that go on in a specific area, which will lead to, a disparity in those numbers. For a little while there, Backcountry and Highlands Ranch only had 2 or 3 properties that were for sale. We've seen those jump up quite a bit. I also believe that, when you're only talking about 40 houses in a zip code, those numbers can vary widely. So we can't really take those micro views and make too many assumptions off of them.
And that specific zip code, the 80126, is a very complex one because it does include Backcountry in the south, includes Highwoods, which are also very expensive homes, but then it includes some condos and townhouses in the town center area. It includes the Northridge neighborhood, which were built in the 80s. So it's a pretty big spectrum of pricing from, $400,000 condo all the way to a $4 million house in Backcountry. So you're going to see some huge fluctuations if just a few more backcountry houses come on, or we get a lot more condos coming on. It's going to really skew the averages in the 80126 especially.
Well, I think we should take a quick break, and then let's talk about different areas if I'm thinking about moving into Highlands Ranch, and what people can expect to pay and what types of houses there are. As we said, we're going to talk about Highlands Ranch, which is pretty much from the east side of Santa Fe, below 470, C470, and then there's a area over here called Lone Tree. So we're going to stay kind of to the west of Quebec, and then there's this big open space on the south side of it. So Andrea, as I draw around this area up toward the northwest corner, what are we looking at as far as housing types and typical price ranges?
Yeah, so that's the 80129 area code, the west side of Highlands Ranch. That includes the Highlands Ranch Golf Club neighborhood. So those houses are between 800 and maybe a high $1.5 million, $2 million. And it also includes just very average single family homes in the Westridge area. Those I would say are 650 to 750. And it also includes, you circled the Weatherstone neighborhood.
Yeah.
So that's a little neighborhood that Brian and I are pretty familiar with. And the houses there are from 900 to, we have a new one that just hit the market at 1.8 million. So
that you've got price ranges from way up there all the way down. Let me see, what's the most expensive one on the market right now, according to Zillow, is 2.2 mil, and that one's actually a backcountry, so I think maybe that I may have snagged a little bit of backcountry in there. Okay. Yep. So you see the 1.8, that's Westridge. Okay. That's a neighbor of ours that I know. Really nice, completely remodeled house. Cool. Brian, the other thing to note on this, go ahead, is Richmond American Homes is actually they have an area that they are selling brand newly constructed homes. It's the only place in Highlands Ranch that you can buy a newly constructed home right now, and they're calling that Westridge. That is over by the dog park. There's one on Ironwood Street there. Yep. And so they have 5 models over there. 4 of those
they're building 5 models. They only have one house that's completed that you can walk through. That is the Dillon model over at Richmond Homes. These round out anywhere between 900 and $1,300,000 as a starting price. They're all dirt start lots, but they're building them and they're popping up there pretty quickly. So it's worth just noting, we haven't seen this since the closeout of backcountry, newly constructed homes in Highlands Ranch. And that's something that we get asked for a lot when people are moving to town. Obviously, Highlands Ranch started building in 1980, and there's various ages of houses. And this is the most recent new build product in Highlands Ranch.
You answered my question. I was wondering when they actually started this development down here. So 1980 timeframe, huh?
Yep.
And if we head a little bit east, we've got, I guess they call it Northridge area.
Northridge, yeah. Those are the original Highlands Ranch homes. So those are the 1980s and beyond. Of course, there's the Northridge Rec Center there. Also a lot of shopping, the movie theater, restaurants in that area.
In this area, you can expect on the lower end to find, a 3-bed, 2-bath, 3-bed, 3-bath home, probably rounding out around 1,200 square feet. Those are going to be kind of in the lower price point. We've seen them as low as $450,000, but averaging about $500,000 right now. So if you were looking for the least expensive single-family home in Highlands Ranch, Northridge would probably be the place that you would find it.
That's cool. So a little bit further west, they're going to be even more this center section. But have you seen a lot of these have been updated? It looks like a lot of them have.
We see a mixed bag. We see, original owners that have owned it for 35 years and still have some things that they needed to do to it. A lot of investors or people who have the knack for updating homes will purchase those. But over time, you do see that quite a few have been updated. And but when we go on listing presentations, it's sometimes a mixed bag of what updates have been done versus what needs to be done.
And then I'm going to look at this area here. It looks like it's the west part of Wildcat Reserve, which I think I'll grab part of backcountry in there. And this might have a little bit of overlap from what we talked about before. But it looks like we have some townhomes and condos as you get on the north part there. But it looks like I grabbed a lot of duplicates here. Let me redraw that and see what we'll do this area down here. So these mainly single family homes down here?
I would say mostly. Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
Oh, I was just saying you grab 2 of the most expensive areas in Highlands Ranch, which is backcountry, and then Highwoods. Highwoods sits on the north side of Wildcat Reserve and the east side of Broadway. And then all of kind of south of Wildcat, we have our neighborhood, and then also backcountry. In that little corridor, kind of to the west of Broadway and then the north of Wildcat, we do have some homes that range between 700 and all the way up to 850. A lot of nice homes that back to open space. We've got a couple that are coming up here in the next few months in that area. Typically about 3,000 square feet up, finished basements, and there's a lot of lots that kind of back to the open space there.
And that includes the Indigo Hills neighborhood, which is a really nice neighborhood. They have their own community pool. They do food truck nights and different community events. So we've definitely sold some houses in that neighborhood. People seem pleased with the community there. You also have the Whitehaven townhomes in the corner of Broadway and Wildcat. And those are still a pretty good deal. You can get a townhome in the 400s that are 2 and 3 bedroom homes.
Great.
Yeah, so a 3-bed, 3-bath for $450 that just went on this last week.
Well, that's awesome. And or you could spend $4.3 million if you have the money. I assume this one's in backcountry on
Rain Ribbon, yes.
Yeah,
that's at the top of backcountry.
Yeah. It's right up here. It's this one here.
Yeah.
So they've got some amazing views up there for sure. Are there any parts of Highlands Ranch that don't have HOAs, or is the whole community is it all HOA covered by HOAs?
Yeah, Highlands Ranch is the Highlands Ranch Community Association. So that's the main association that covers all of Highlands Ranch. So you always will have that one HOA. Right now, the quarterly dues are $171 a month. So not that expensive, considering it includes the 4 rec centers. And then there's maybe around half or less than half of the other homes will have a second HOA that will cover things like if they do have a specific community pool in their neighborhood, they have to pay for landscaping or snow removal, then you'll have the sub-association that'll have its own separate dues.
Okay. So, but
Just remember, as a reminder, I didn't think of this, but Highlands Ranch encompasses over 38,000 homes within its boundaries. And with that, the Metro District does an excellent job of maintaining 4 great rec centers and a plethora of open space parks and trails. But inside Highlands Ranch, you can have micro communities that have their own HOAs that operate a pool or operate, various other things that, the residents there like. And so there's a lot of houses, but at the same time, it's one of the best metro districts in Colorado.
Yeah, that's good to keep in mind. So if we now look a little bit further to the east, I didn't want to do that. Let me cancel that and draw it again. We've got is it Southridge?
Southridge, yeah. Southridge, which has the Hearth, the Firelight neighborhoods.
A lot of townhomes?
There is a community of townhomes off of Wildcat and MacArthur Ranch. There's some like patio homes there too, townhomes. So you still get a good mix of single family and attached homes.
And
I think you'll find in the Hearth and Firelight, these were typically the newer homes of Highlands Ranch within the last 10 to 15 years. A lot of people gravitated towards this because you were a quick shot down Quebec to get to either Lincoln Avenue or Quebec all the way to C470 to get, into the main I-25 corridor. So access from these areas is really good. Some of the things that we see are, people gravitating towards the newer floor plans, newer neighborhoods that are back there, as opposed to some of the things that we talked about in Northridge that were built, prior to 2000.
And then there's one more, I think, community on the east side of, or on the west side of Quebec. And that is kind of this Heritage Region Park and all the way along Quebec. And what are we looking at here? Not a lot of properties for sale, like 7.
No, and what's interesting is on the east side of Quebec, you have Wildcat, which is its own community that's not affiliated with Highlands Ranch. It is basically Highlands Ranch adjacent, doesn't participate in the HOA.
Okay.
But one of the things that we did find out recently was there is an opportunity for people who purchase properties over there to participate in and get a paid membership to the Highlands Ranch rec centers, which is a nice feature. But this little corridor there, houses are probably about 15 to 20 years old, anywhere from, mid 7s to 900. And then we also have, in that bottom south area, kind of the newest townhouses. Those things were, 3-story townhomes that, we were so surprised, start in the 700s and can go up to 850.
There's seems to be a wide range of properties and price points in Highlands Ranch. And I think a lot of people think, oh, Highlands Ranch, it's really expensive. But there's a lot of variety, isn't there, Andrea?
I think what we're noticing too, some opportunities are there have been landlords in Highlands Ranch that now are getting out of it and they're selling their investment properties. So sometimes those are a little bit more in the rougher end of updating and remodeling, but you can get a good deal because it is an investor just looking to sell their investment and get out of the market. So we've seen some good deals come up that way, that if you're willing to put in a little sweat equity, you can have a really nice house in Highlands Ranch.
It's traditionally what people love about Highlands Ranch is you can buy your starter home there. And then over the years, as things change with you, there are other places in Highlands Ranch that aren't too far where you can kind of move up and move into. Highlands Ranch didn't build a lot of single-story homes, so those are at a premium sometimes as we have an aging population that doesn't want to deal with stairs anymore. And so, if you've got a ranch floor plan in Highlands Ranch, it's definitely gold to a lot of people who want to ditch their 2 stories and still live in a great neighborhood.
Highlands Ranch.
Ranch.
Exactly. Well, this has been a great tour, and obviously these two know Highlands Ranch quite well, so they're a great group to talk to. To talk to anybody on their team would be a great opportunity to learn more about Highlands Ranch, and we appreciate you taking us on the tour. One of the decisions you need to make, along with the decision on where you're going to live, is how soon you should think about it now that we're heading into what we in Colorado call the listing season. So I thought we'd have a great discussion about if I'm going, I know they're constantly going on a listing appointment. Brian and Andrea are. They're doing listing appointments. What are you hearing out there? What are you telling people as they're on the listing appointment?
Well, this time of year, we are about to head into summer. So if we can get ahead of it, we try to encourage people to start looking at their yard because curb appeal is so important. So if you can get your yard aerated, fertilized, start thinking about turning on the sprinklers. It's a little soon, but at least start doing the things that will make your grass look really nice when it is time to go on the market. You can start doing that work now. So besides working on the inside of your house, work on the outside too. If you have dead leaves from the fall, pine leaves, go ahead and clean those up. It'll make a huge difference.
Brian, are you hearing people say, I've got to be out by X date these days? And then how do you handle and accommodate that?
Yeah, so we're really proud because our real estate team can kind of match what our clients are looking for. So sometimes we get people that say, hey, the word came down, we're relocating. Well, we're going to grab the family, the dog, all of our stuff, and we're going to be out in the next 3 weeks, and then the house is yours to sell. We also have people that, kick the tires and, kind of call us with an idea and say, hey, we're thinking about making a move, but we don't know what, is out there for us. I had a past client of ours that reached out in the beginning of January and said, hey, we need a little bit more space. We were able to kind of get them caught up on what the market had to offer them. They've found an exceptional new build property, but now we're backfilling because that property is going to be ready in June, July. Builders don't like to give us the exact date and time. So what we do is then we work with them to figure out what that timeline looks like so that they're not doing a double move, so that they don't have to move things into storage, so that it can be as seamless as possible. And really that kind of starts with, for us, when can we take pictures? When is the house going to be ready, picture ready, so that Rocket Media can get in there, get us great pictures, get us a floor plan. We've got one that's coming up in the Hearth right now, and we made sure that we had them ready for pictures. And now that we have pictures, we can move as quickly or as slowly as we need. But we're looking out at the next 3 weeks to determine what's going to be the best time for them to sell, making sure that we dodge holidays like Easter. We don't like listing houses on July 4th weekend or Super Bowl weekend when traditionally people aren't out. Mother's Day is coming up, and believe it or not, mom does not like to go and look at houses during Mother's Day. So those are the things that we take into account because we do this day in and day out for our clients and steering them towards and away from places that we think might get in the way of it or actually excel in their showings.
Well, every day, every house is different in how quickly or slowly it sells. But what are you looking, is there an average? Is there a median for like townhomes versus homes that we're looking at right now as far as the days on market?
We've seen days on market fluctuate between 30 and 45 days. So I'd say at the third and fourth quarter of last year, we saw them bumping up a little bit. And now we're seeing things that are moving a little bit quicker. Andrea and I toured a property over in the Indigo Hills area. It was impeccably redone. It was on a really nice lot. And that one was under contract before the end of the weekend. So, when we look at those statistics that we talked about earlier, when we talk about days on market, some of those days on market when they are 45 days or more, it's because that's inventory that the market hasn't worked through. The market has said to those, hey, that's a price that we won't pay. So their days on market start hitting 60, 75, but then we still have properties that are moving very quickly. What do you think, Andrea?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a mix. And that's the hardest part of our job is predicting how soon is my house going to sell. Well, it depends on a lot of things, on the demand, on the interest rates, and how you eventually price it. So obviously a well-priced home is going to sell quickly. And if you overprice, it's going to take a little bit longer for that correct buyer to come along, or for the demand to meet your price. So it is definitely a mixed amount of time. We like to give people a cushion so that, yes, we can list your house now. It possibly will sell right away, and then we'll ask for a post-closing occupancy. But if it doesn't sell right away, then you're still within your time frame of when you wanted to move anyway. So it's definitely a lot of calculating calendar days to see when do we predict that your closing date will be.
And are days on market till they get to closing, or until they get to under contract?
So the typical days on market or days in market in our MLS actually talks about the time that it's listed up until the time that it goes under contract or pending. So when we're talking about that, the typical close timeline, once you are pending and you've accepted a contract, is about 30 days with a loan. Sometimes cash buyers will come in and try to, tighten that up for a quicker close to be more attractive to sellers. But I would say typically, right now, 30 to 45 days, when we talk about that, that's the time in which it takes for you to get an acceptable contract on your property. So you can already tell that when we're talking 30 to 45 days, and then we add on 30 days in order to close, we're looking at 75 days out. And if you're talking about a new build property being ready or having to be at a new job out of state, we need to take those things into consideration. One of the things that Andrea touched on that I love is, when you price it correctly, you get that demand instantaneously. And what that affords you is the ability to negotiate things like an increased price, or asking for post-closing occupancy, saying, hey, we need to close in 30 days. That way, the seller knows that they have their money, but then they can ask for 2, 3, 4 weeks in the property so that they can make that a seamless transition. It's much tougher when we're on the market for an extended period of time in the wrong price point, and then we're trying to negotiate that later on for the perfect time frame for the client. So we always encourage that we do our homework for you, and we want to make sure that you're in the right price range so that you can get the best offer and the terms that will help you move on.
And Andrea, if I say I need to get $580,000 out of this property, and you think it's worth $540,000, how do those match up? Because I think people think what I need to get out of it may be different than what I can get out of it, right?
Yeah, we hear that a lot. I need to get X price for my house. So our best advice is, let's look at the data. Let's look at other houses just like yours. How much did they sell for? What did they look like? Let's go see those houses. And then basically just setting the expectation of, if you're going to list for this price, you also need to be willing to go down in price if nothing happens. Like if you don't get any offers in the first 2 or 3 weeks, that's the market telling you that maybe your price is a little too high. And you can either change something about the house, because you can't change the location, but you could try to do some updating to the house, some staging, fresh paint, carpet. Those are definitely things that aren't super expensive, but will make a huge difference. And then maybe you will get that price that you need. But the market will tell you the price that your house is worth.
And what I think is...
We do cringe when we...
Go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, Rick. We do cringe when we hear, we need this. Because the reality of the situation is, we don't set the price. The seller doesn't set the price. They might set the starting price, but the market ultimately determines how much your house is worth. And there is some psychology that goes along with this. If someone has seen a property sit on the market for a while, they obviously think that there is more negotiating room for concessions, price, and other things. So days on market are critical, and just waiting rarely gets you additional money in your pocket. I would rather see a house that is priced competitively, that garners a lot of interest through the marketing that we do and the videos that we do. And therefore, you now have people competing over your property, which results in the best result. Well, which results in the best price and terms for the client.
And I think probably getting your house ready for sale is an important part of that. So let's talk about staging next. So this is a property that was unusual because the owner wanted to get it on the market right away. And so we shot it twice, once totally vacant, and then shortly thereafter, we actually staged it. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the power of staging with Andrea and Brian, because they know all about that. So we're going to show some of these pictures, and why don't you guys have a discussion about staging? I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so, to start it off, I always thought that, statistics are pretty powerful. And NAR did a study on home staging, and they found that 58% of buyer's agents cited that home staging had some effect on how buyers viewed that home. And while 31% said that home staging had effect, but not always. So, we're seeing that buyer's agents notice when somebody walks into a property, they're buyers, and it is staged. 81% of buyer's agents said staging a home made it easier for the buyer to visualize the property. So when we're talking about this property, we needed to get it on the market. We wanted to have the best marketing possible. So we shot it twice. We paid to have Rick come twice and, get both, vacant, and then also we had our stager come in and physically stage the property.
And then I took some of these pictures that and actually did what's called virtual stage. And Andrea, what is that? What is virtually staging?
So virtually staging is a lower cost to still give people an idea of what furniture would look like. So sometimes it's just a time constraint that you don't have time to get physical furniture in. Sometimes it is the cost, and you can take an image and throw in some couches, a bed, decorations to give people an idea of what it looks like. So then at least online, they can see it. And then also you can have these printed out and have them at the property to give people an idea of what furniture would look like. We get questions a lot of times in vacant houses, would a queen size bed fit here? Would a king size bed fit here? So without seeing it there physically, sometimes it's hard for them to visualize, but at least if you had a picture of what, where the furniture would go in the room, it gives people a good idea of what it would look like.
And to be clear, it says virtually staging. That means that this furniture is not there. It's all digital, correct?
Yeah, that is all created with a computer. So from the reflections, the shadowing, we've really come a long way with virtual staging.
Come a huge way in like 5 years' time. It used to look like plastic furniture, and I would have a tough time deciding whether this was real or not. And then here, Brian, is the actual staged furniture, and you bring in a stager, correct, for this?
Yeah, so we brought in a stager who physically brings in all the accoutrements. Andrea does a great job. We have some of our own staging material, such as plants and vases and things like that, and towels to spruce up bathrooms. But for this particular property, there was such a big area with kind of the dining room, family room, and then also the kitchen. It just made sense for us to bring in staged furniture. It's interesting because the most common rooms that are staged, 91% of all 91% of all living rooms, when a property is staged with furniture, we commonly do. Here, let me start over on that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yep. You can start.
Okay. So one of the questions that we get too is, what room should I stage, Brian? And 91% of the time you'll see the family room is going to be staged. 81% of the time a kitchen is staged, primary bedroom, and then the dining room are kind of round out the top four. In this particular property, you can see a very large open area between the kitchen and then the kind of dining area and the living room. It was good for us to be able to bring in furniture. a lot of times when we're showing buyers vacant property, they just don't have the vision that it takes to put their things inside a room that is completely vacant. So having a table there, having a couch there, it helps them go, my couch is bigger than that. Oh, we do have a sectional that will fit perfectly in there. It sometimes even gives them different ways or different thoughts on how you can arrange a room. The stager that we bring in is very adept at understanding, what looks good. In this particular property, we had a front room that could be a bedroom or an office space. So we staged it as an office, but it really showed that room was very big and versatile.
And I noticed you have some light staging in the kitchen here, Andrea.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, kitchens. It is good to have a plant or two to bring in some color. She has a cookbook, a bottle of wine. Generally, with occupied houses, we do try to have as much taken off the counters as possible to give it a clean look. But with a vacant home, you don't want it completely empty. So there's a couple inexpensive staging items you can get. It doesn't have to be elaborate. A plant, a vase, just something to catch your eye and to kind of break up the emptiness of a completely empty kitchen. Because in our real lives, we're not used to seeing that. We're used to seeing dishes out, appliances and things like that. So when it's completely empty, it's a little harder to visualize.
It's nice having.
I think you'll also notice that
Go ahead.
I think you'll also notice that just having artwork and a mirror on the wall also really warms up the space. Rick, if you'll go back and kind of fade this one down, there's a very big difference when someone's walking through this space and it's stark white, and then it really warms it up when you've got art on the wall and, a pop of color on the middle of the island. I think it really, it leads to, I could see myself here. This is a warm house. I could see my things in here as well.
I tend to think of it taking it from a house to home. People live in homes. They buy houses. So this is the primary bedroom. What'd you do in here, Andrea? Oh, by the way, I have a virtually staged version as well of this.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So in this original home, the bedroom was actually enlarged. So the original footprint of this bedroom was smaller. So now it's a larger primary bedroom where you can fit a king size bed, some furniture. There are 2 dual closets. So you want to show that there's plenty of space for actual people to live here, put their clothes away. Here's one place you could put the bed. You could put it on the other wall. But yeah, definitely staging a primary bedroom is pretty huge, makes a big difference, because otherwise sometimes rooms actually seem smaller when there's no furniture in it versus when there is furniture, you actually get a better sense of the space.
It makes this.
I will say,
makes it look big.
I keep stepping on you, Rick. I apologize.
No problem.
But one of the things that I will kind of add to that is virtual staging is great. We want excellent pictures and we want people to see spaces when they're, in their jammas, clicking through listings, deciding what they're going to go look at. But the actual physical staging of a property, I think, really helps, because that same feeling that they got when they were looking at the property online is then replicated once they're in the space. I have seen clients that get really excited about a property online with some virtual staging that's done on the pictures, and then we get inside the house and they don't necessarily have that picture to reference. So it feels different. And a lot of times that feeling is, what makes or breaks whether or not this might be your next house.
And this is the study, if you walked into this room, even if it was virtually staged online like this, you might forget how it looked, but then you walk in and they've set it up with actual staging. Now you can recreate that look, right, Andrea? And that feeling. And
home offices are huge these days, so people really do like to see what it would look like with a desk and some furniture in there. So I'd say that's a big requirement we have these days. People working from home is having a home office, at least one, if sometimes they need 2. So this way we can show that it's large enough for an office. It had a closet. If you needed it to be a bedroom, that's an easy fix. It can still be a bedroom. But the versatility there in that floor plan really helped.
Well, and if we circle back to what we were talking about on one of the other decisions of getting the highest price, you want it to look its best, right, Andrea?
Yeah, it's super important. people are paying a lot, and when they look at their monthly payment, they want to know that they're getting what they paid for. So, yeah, you do have to put a little effort into it. I mean, back in 2021, 22, houses would sell before they even could be seen in person. So, it's times have changed, and you have to change with them, which includes doing things like virtual staging or physical staging. Yeah, and there are some situations where somebody's living in a house and they already have furniture, and their furniture looks nice, but maybe we need to rearrange it, or take some things out or add some plants, but we don't need to do a full-blown staging. So we can work with people too who have their own things. We're not going to take all your furniture out and put it in storage and put staging in. We can work with what you have. We had a listing last year where she had a treadmill in a bedroom, and in her basement she had a big empty spot, and we said, well, can we take that treadmill and put it in that empty spot to show that this could be a gym area? And she's like, oh yeah, never thought about that. So we did it. Looked great. House sold really quickly.
What's fun is you guys are able to re-envision their house. And I've heard so many homeowners going, I'm second guessing whether I want to sell now because they fall in love with their home after you guys get in there.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that physically staging a property is not cheap. Typically, the term that you rent the staging furniture for is between 30 and 45 days, just initially to have it put in, and then that covers also pulling it out of the property once it's completed. Sometimes we see prices or houses that aren't priced correctly that do staging, but it's cost prohibitive for them to keep that physical staging in there past 30, 45, 60 days. So when we talk with our clients, we really try to customize and tailor. There's no reason for them to be paying thousands of dollars for a staging job like the one that you saw here if we aren't going to be pricing it correctly, if we aren't going to be doing the marketing that's necessary. All the staging in the world isn't going to help. This is just an enhancement, but it does come at a cost.
And essentially, if the price is too high for what the market wants to pay, you're essentially just paying more money over time because it's not going to probably sell, or you might get lucky, but if you priced it right, you might have the 30-day worth of staging costs, and then it's under contract. Do you pull it right after it goes under contract? So you keep it on, huh?
No, there's always superstitions with, going under contract. Things still fall out of contract. So we generally will notify the stager that we went under contract, give them an idea of our closing date and maybe our last deadline where the buyer could possibly back out so that the furniture can stay in there just in case that first buyer backs out. We'll still have the furniture there and not have to restage it.
And the way you guys operate, who pays for staging typically? Actual physical staging.
Yeah, and I think it's a discussion that we enter into with the seller as to what they're trying to accomplish. We will kind of talk them through what this expense is. Typically, we will help with staging their furniture, but if it comes to making the most of the space and bringing in all new furniture, that's usually a cost that the seller will take on. But we've also counseled them about the other things that are necessary in order to help their house sell. And, so they have a full picture of what they're investing in.
And obviously, if you've got 1970s furniture and the homeowner doesn't want to get it out, something that I don't think a lot of people know is the virtual staging can actually take that old furniture out and show what it looks like with more contemporary furniture. Have you ever done that with any of your properties, Andrea?
Yeah, no, the power of AI now is that a lot of times somebody will say, oh, I have this in my house, but I don't think it's going to look good in pictures. And I can just say, oh, that's fine. We can remove that with AI. Like that huge piece of furniture can be removed in a couple of clicks. So yeah, we can definitely do more things than we ever could before. With the power of just a software program that you can say, take this thing and replace it with something else, or you can just say, take it completely out of the room and it will blend in the wall behind it and make it look pretty realistic.
When they're hanging their 19 or 60-inch flat screen TV on their 1980s oak furniture, doesn't quite go.
Yeah.
Makes it, you want to have it look like what a contemporary furniture might look like, and we've got that possibility. And then I think it would probably be beneficial to show the picture like on an easel or something when you're showing, right, Brian?
Yeah, and I think that also leads to some other questions that that we've talked about in the real estate community. Is we should be tagging those photos saying staged virtually, or reimagined with AI. Making sure that the consumer is aware that this isn't the place that they're going to walk into. A long time ago, when Photoshop was first getting started, we would see some real estate practitioners or homeowners that would take a photo and they would take their brown dirt / gray grass and they would color it bright green, bright lush green. And then when you pulled up in front of the property, there wasn't green grass, there wasn't hardly any grass, and therefore a lot of us feel that that's a misrepresentation of the property, rather than showing that it was like this back in the fall or in the summertime, rather than reimagining it with a very big tall tree that blocks out the neighbors in the backyard. So I think that there is a give and take there, and we sometimes see where the boundaries are pushed a little bit. We don't want to reimagine it to a place that it can't be. We want to enhance it or give a different perspective. And I think that that's the power of AI and virtual staging.
And joining me is Nancy Alexander from Smart Mortgage Services. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Rick.
How are you doing today?
I am good, sir. How about you? It's end of week.
It's the end of the week. We're doing well. Say, I wanted to talk about the end of the process because we've talked about loan applications and things like that. But let's just say I've been working with you and I've been pre-approved. Now what?
Okay, so remember the pre-approval is the process, Rick, of you telling me this is everything that I have and I do, right? My employment, my assets, but you haven't backed it up yet. So at that point, I'm going to say, okay, you've got your loan application in the system. Let's back it up, the information now. In other words, send in your pay stub, send in your W-2, send in your bank statements. If you have a gifted funds, your gift letter. If you're self-employed, it's going to be tax returns. But that's everything that you and I are going to talk about verbally before I put it in a list and email it to you and say, okay, begin your uploads.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So now your uploads are in, let's say, and we're ready to push this file. Now, next thing is you've got a contract.
Okay, I found a house, got it under contract.
Found a house, you got it under contract, it was accepted by seller. The realtor now is going to push the contract to me. I'm going to take a look at it, fill in the blanks that I need to fill in, and then I'm going to push it to my processing team.
Okay.
My processing team is going to be a second set of eyes, right? They're going to look at that file. They're going to make sure everything I saw in there is in there, i.e. all of your documentation needed to push it to a physical underwriter. That physical underwriter, right now, you guys, underwriting is taking about 2 hours. I mean, it's not a lengthy process.
Okay, if you've got all your ducks in a row.
If you got all your ducks in a row, and if we did our job right, and you as the client did your job right, right? So it goes through underwriting, and it always, you can take it to the bank, it always comes out with a conditional approval.
Okay.
Okay, because there may not be anything asked from you, Rick, as the client, but it may be asked from us as the lender. And so typically you're going through underwrite before you have the appraisal. If you have an appraisal waiver, then that waiver is substantiated in underwriting, right? But if you don't, now we've got the conditional approval. We're waiting for that appraisal. We may be waiting for revisions on title, but you as the borrower are now fully approved. Your documentation has been looked at, has been approved, and you're good to go with that conditional approval. We wait for those conditions to come in. We now are looking for CTC, or what's called clear to close. Now, as soon as we get clear to close, we're starting to look at doing your final figures, getting you that cash to close number so you know what you're bringing to the closing table. And that's pretty much the process.
Where does the verification of employment come in that process?
Great question. You have good questions. Verification of employment comes in at the beginning of the process, and it comes in 3 days before closing.
Okay.
So we do what we call a hard verification of employment, where we're sending a document to your employer to verify that, yes, you are employed. What are your hours? Does the money on the pay stub match the money on the verification of employment? And then 3 days before closing, we're doing what's called a soft verification of employment. And so the employer is not actually contacted. They're doing it electronically, making sure indeed you are still working at where you said you were.
Okay. And so after that, you're good to go, and you've got all the docs are in, you've got the appraisal and everything, and then so over soup to nuts, is that a couple week turn time from the time you do the approval, but you have to go through all that loan docs, or does it matter? I guess it depends on if you have all your documentation, right?
Right, it really does. And so, I mean, if somebody has their real ducks in a row, right, and everything is just kind of next, then can that process be 7 days? That you can go from beginning, getting your loan docs, signing everything, to having your CTC? Yeah, it could be 7 days. If you've got things like a trust that needs to be approved, if you've got gifted funds that need to come in, if you do have that appraisal that needs to come in, you're looking at 12 to 14 days from beginning to end. Most contracts are written on a 30-day window, only because you still have, right, you as the borrower have two things you have to do. You have to play with the real estate side of the transaction and play with the lending side of the transaction at the same time.
Right.
The real estate side of the transaction, you have to do what first? You have to do your inspection.
Right.
Right. And so how long is that inspection going to take? Your objection, your negotiation with the seller, if there's any additional, for us to continue then to move forward towards that closing date. So we can move as the lender a lot faster than what typically the borrower can move, hence the 30-day window that normally prevails.
Okay. Well, that's all great information, as always. And if you want to get a hold of Nancy, you can do so by calling her at the number on the screen. And look forward to seeing you next week. It's awesome having Brian and Andrea on today. If you want to get a hold of Andrea, here's her number on the screen. It's been great having you on. And if you want to get a hold of Brian, you can do so on this number on the screen. And thanks for being on. And of course, if you want to see more episodes of The Pro Show, you can go to theproshow.com, and you can also listen to it on your favorite podcast as well. And you can listen to Andrea and Brian coming up here in a couple of days as we get it posted. And once again, thanks for your being on the program today.